You're listening to the Precision Shooting Podcast, discussing all aspects of precision and long-range rifle shooting. This episode is brought to you by Projectile Warehouse. Find your perfect projectile. And now, over to your hosts.
Hello and welcome to the Precision Shooting Podcast. This is Rusty here, and in unusual circumstances, we have Greg over there in the corner. Hey, Greg.
Yeah, how you going, Rusty?
Good, mate. Andrew in the middle on that side.
How you doing?
Yeah, excellent. And special guest again, Ben Johnson. How are you, Ben?
Good, thanks, Rusty.
Excellent.
Very good.
So we are in a fairly loud environment this time. We're actually at the Impact Dynamics Catchup in Adelaide in town. And we've got a whole stack of people sort of ignoring us, hopefully, and drinking some beer and having some food. And it's usually a pretty good chat. How you guys going?
Yeah,
good.
pretty well.
Really good. Yep.
Yeah, it's all going well.
Very good.
Getting out for a shoot. I know a few of us went off to the old Flinders, and that podcast will be up next in a couple of weeks, I think.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
I didn't get to attend that one, but
No.
it looked fun.
Well, you would have been wonderful. The next time is going to happen with Andrew coming along.
I've already got a new rifle planned for that trip. So
What do you got planned?
I'm looking at a 7mm Rem mag in a Seiko Rough Tech range. Is what I'm thinking.
Very nice.
Nice.
Something a bit lighter than my heavy 300 Win mag,
Yep.
but still sort of capable of the 1,000-metre plus shots. So
Yeah, that'd be good.
yeah, so that's what I'm thinking at this stage.
I've always
You've
liked-
inspired me.
I've always liked those rough techs. Yeah.
I haven't seen a bad review on them. They seem to be getting very good reviews and
Yep.
a bit lighter. I mean, my 300 Win mag comes in at about 17 pounds, so
Okay.
it'll be
Just
considerably lighter.
Absolutely. Yeah, they got good stocks on them. Yeah, I've been impressed with that. But I'd like to shoot one. I mean, they'd probably turn out well, I'm sure. But you're a Seiko man, aren't you, Ben?
I am. I love my Seikos. Yep, both Seikos and Tikkas. Obviously, most of my... I think I've only got two guns that are not
Yeah, right.
out of my plethora. I've got everything from an old one, an L579 and 22-250, which has been rebarreled. And the thing is a laser beam. Absolutely love that gun.
Yeah, wonderful.
Up to my Tikka Tactical, which I took on the trip to the Flinders,
Yeah, you did.
which was great.
You did. That was good. Excellent. Greg, any new guns for you, mate, or any... No? Still trying to work out how to get the right barrel?
No, I haven't spent too much money on gun gear, but...
Just been cashing up other things.
No, I've been spending it on trips, which is great. So that's even better.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, so, yeah, bit of a long-range shoot a couple of weeks back, and then obviously we went away, which we'll talk about in another podcast. But, yeah, a pure long-range affair, it was wonderful. It was an excellent trip.
Brilliant. Well, we're in the back of a pub here, and as you can probably hear in the background, there's lots of people enjoying themselves. This sort of thing happens every 3 months in Adelaide, and a bunch of shooters get together, and we thought we'd sit here and amuse ourselves while they all drank beer. Oh, it probably wasn't the smartest plan, was it? Anyway, we're here and committed. And what we thought we'd do is actually grab a few questions from the crowd, from the people here. So Coral's come up and wanted to ask us some questions. So let's throw that over to her. How are you tonight?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Rusty. How are you?
Excellent. Wow, that's this sharing one microphone is kind of awkward. Anyway, I'll pass it over to you next time. So now you shoot as well. What type of shooting do you enjoy doing?
Lately, it's just been a more short distance with a 22 rifle.
Yeah, wonderful. Excellent way to practice, though. Yeah, brilliant. And I know that you're real keen to start shooting some longer range stuff. Yeah, excellent. Is your question related to that sort of gear?
No, it's not. I actually had more of a social question. I was interested to know how excited you guys were to see Catherine Skinner, the Aussie, take out Golden Rio for trap shooting.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I guess what was a bit of a letdown on that one was the lack of media exposure from a number of media outlets. But other than that, it was fantastic to see. I mean, well, a gold in shooting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's. I mean, I'd love to obviously some long distance represented at the Olympics, but that's probably not in the cards anytime soon. But yeah, it was real exciting. Really good to see. And but it was a real shame to see that Catherine had to sort of to some degree justify what she was actually doing, which is I don't know any other sport at the Olympics where those sort of questions are asked of the person that won the gold medal. So pretty disappointed to see that, and also that shooter in the US who won. Was it 6 medals in 6 Olympics? Someone correct me if I'm wrong. But
yeah, 6 Olympics straight.
Yeah.
and yet virtually zero exposure, which is just, well, I mean, if it had been swimming or rowing or anything, they would have been all over the media. So
that's exactly right. So wonderful to hear about it. Slightly disappointed with how it all went down, but I mean, to Catherine on a personal level, obviously, congratulations, because that is not that she probably listens to a precision shooting podcast, but anyway, she can probably shoot better than all of us. So, so she's done excellent for what she's doing, and I mean, I've always liked clay shooting. I know Andrew can't hit a thing, but I've always enjoyed it, and so I was very impressed and watched the replays several times to really get a good feel for it. Yeah, did you enjoyed it? Did you see it live?
I didn't see it live, saw the reruns, and was just super excited to see at least a female shooter get so much publicity and bring back a gold to Australia and hopefully promote the sport a bit more within here.
I think what was good to see as well is that, a female shooter in particular, it sort of breaks that stereotype of, the bogan, just a male-dominated sport. To see a woman come in and dominate, it kind of leaves the people that are opposed to the sport a little bit, they can't really attack.
Yeah. Certainly, and Letitia, who I've met a couple of times, she also shot, and she shot really well. She came fifth as well for. Now I'm going to get this wrong if I say what she does, so I think it's skeet shooting, but no, I probably got that wrong. Anyway, sorry, Letitia. I know you shoot shotguns, but shotguns are all shotguns to me. So, no one shoots shotguns properly. He's listening to this, I'm sure. Anyway, that's a different story. But yeah, good to see quite a few Aussies do quite well. I know the one guy that I guess most of us have a connection to, Will, who was actually involved in writing some of the original sort of impact dynamics courses as well. He shot a couple of days ago and he didn't do as well, but at least he's there, and that was his second Olympics, and he's done very well for that sort of side of things and representing the shooting community. So it is good to see it represented. Absolutely.
Yeah, it is fantastic to see the sport starting to get some airtime like that.
Very good. Thank you very much for your question. Huh? That's brilliant. All right, we're going to draw Bronte over here. Bronte.
Throw something at him.
I guess a bit of a prelude here to his appearance would be Bronte came a very close second at the PRI, only due to a technicality. Well, no, not a technicality, a countback, I guess you would call it.
Equal first. He was equal first, and he. But on the deciding stage that the scores then counted, he came second, but he came first, in my mind, in my heart.
You're shooting 2.43, you should have come first.
That was the only downside of it, really. So that's why I let it go through, but he did very well. So Bronte has had some... Anyway, you've been talking to Greg about it. What was... Greg, do you want to ask Bronte?
Well, I'll kick it off, but I mightn't have picked up all the detail. I know, Bronte gets out hunting quite a bit, chasing deer down the southeast of South Australia, and while he was out hunting, he and we all know Bronte could shoot, as we just talked about, and when he did his solution for a particular shot, he got a bit of a surprise. So now I'll hand over to you, Bronte, on what sort of unfolded and how you sort of resolved it in the end.
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. As Greg was saying, it was had a nice clean shot on a deer at about 800 metres, so it's a considerable range, but it's still something that's achievable if you know your dope. Calculated my solution, I ranged it, felt pretty comfortable with it. Instead of dialing, because typically when I collect my dope I dialed, I held over instead. So when I fired, my solution ended up being out by about 0.4 mil, which ended up with a bullet travelling about 2 foot over the back of the deer. So this was a bit of a perplexing thing at the time, because trying to figure out what went wrong. I traced it back through, and one of the things that we looked at was I was shooting on inclination, which gave a contributing factor to the solution, but that still didn't really explain the discrepancy that I had there. So the obvious turns to the equipment, reviewing what had gone on and how it was all sort of operating. So one of the things I did there was did a scope tracking test, and that had some pretty interesting results. What I found was with my dialed-in dope, my scope was actually out by about 0.2 to 0.3 at that equivalent distance.
Just did you say for that particular shot you held or you dialed?
I held.
Okay.
So I'd collected my dope dialing and had held for for the actual shot itself.
Yep.
So then that basically created this sort of discrepancy between my dope card and what I actually shot on the day, because when I collected my dope, I'd dialed, and it turned out that my scope had a degree of tracking error in there that essentially created that discrepancy between the fired solution and what I had actually achieved with holding over.
Yeah, I guess, feel free to not name the brand of scope, but we've had that really evidently on one course with a really well-known high-price scope, where it was consistently dialing 20% more on target than what you actually dialed on the turrets. And, that was with a $2,000 scope. So it does happen, or can happen. So,
yeah, absolutely. In this particular case, it wasn't not quite as wealthy as Greg, and I can't quite afford a couple of Defiance actions yet. But
nice one.
Get one in there where I can. So it was actually a Vortex PST. So, up until now, it's served pretty well, and it's the same make as what I used in the PRI. So they're relatively reliable, but it's still had that sort of about a 5% error.
But I guess it's worth noting that Vortex are very good on their warranty. So my guess is you'll have that issue rectified without too much trouble. But I guess it's frustrating nonetheless.
Oh, absolutely. But I guess it goes to the question as to what sort of acceptable tolerances can you come from, a scope on a commercial market? Because as you pointed out, you have some quite high-end scopes, have some errors.
Yeah, I guess talking about percentage-wise, I haven't really considered it, but I would imagine, sort of for my thoughts, would have to be within one graduation, whether that be an MOA, quarter MOA or 0.1 mil clicks. To me, if you're outside of that, if you dial 10 mils and it's actually dialing 10.2 or any more than sort of 10.1 or any less than 9.9, it's to me you're outside that sort of level of accepted sort of variance.
Yeah,
because if you're trying to shoot a target that might be, at whatever range, you might be only talking in 1 or 2 tenths of a mil sized target. If you're any more than that, it's not going to be acceptable really. So.
Yeah, and I guess it's probably also worth mentioning that if you don't have the opportunity to return a scope under warranty like Bronte does, as long as you know that tracking error, you can put that adjustment into your ballistic calculator and just factor it into your ballistic solutions through your calculator. So that's just something to keep in mind for those guys whose warranties are expired and they find they've got a tracking error.
I guess the trouble is a lot of guys don't actually ever run a significant tracking test on their scope. So they might shoot it at 100 metres and get it zeroed and it's really shooting well, but when you start to stretch out, 700-800 metres plus, if you haven't actually verified that it tracks true to the click value, well, as you found out, you can have those issues. So.
Yeah, absolutely. No, dead right there, boys. Dead right. All right. I think time to hand back to Rusty. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers, Bronny. Thanks, mate.
Certainly, there was a question, not really a question, but more of an experience that I think was interesting for me anyway.
Yeah.
Because that's real-world examples of things that we've seen a couple of times on courses where people are having issues and they can't explain it, and then you actually check on target and there's an issue there. So
I have to admit I didn't hear a single word of what was spoken about. I've found out that if you're not wearing earmuffs, you're not involved in this conversation. So anyway, that was my absence. Probably good because don't really talk much sense anyway. So speaking of sense, Ashley is here, and Ashley's going to ask us a question a little bit sort of to the left of centre of perhaps precision long-range sort of stuff, but I know that this might be up Ben's alley. So Ashley, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks, good.
Wonderful. Now, you were going to speak to, or you had a question for us. Chuck 'em, man. I reckon Ben's probably got some good answers for you.
With all the attachments out there and coming across the 7615 quite regularly, is it a point where there's too many attachments? Or is there something where you really do need attachments? Or it's, really requirements to, just customise them because you can, or just over the top? That's really my question. It's so many choices now. Really, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of aftermarket upgrades of rifles anyway, so a lot of the guys that I've been, you'll see on Facebook on the Armory page, there's been some upgrades where we're doing MDT chassis on Remington 700s and Tikkas and stuff like that. And basically what people are moving that way because they want to have accessories accessible on their firearms. Now, I've got an MDT TAC 21 on my 308, and I love having TAC rails all the way around because I can either shove my torch on one side, on the Picatinny that's on the side, so I can see out to 650 meters with a little torch, or I can put a laser on the other side if I'm doing close range stuff, or I can put my bipod on there. You can also do night vision attachments, and what it is allowing a chassis system to have the ability, not the restriction. Okay, so it's not necessarily do you need to have all that stuff on at once. And Andrew, you'd be attest to this too, that even in the military, when you start putting so many accessories on your rifle, one, they become bulky and very, very difficult to handle, and really heavy because you've got battery packs on there, you've got all kinds of plethora of different things that you're trying to put on the actual rifle, which is not necessarily a bad thing if you are a set-up sniper. But if you are trudging across the Flinders like we were, even in my sniper bag, I had 2 rifles in there, and it's freaking heavy, man. Like really, really heavy having that much stuff in there. But the whole point of the accessory side of things, I think there can be an element of bling going on with that, and a lot of these guys go that way because they want it to look a certain way. And we see sort of from the government's perspective, they think that bolt action that looks tactical actually will make it more dangerous, but is not really the case because it's usually the person behind the rifle. I mean, you can do it with an ugly whatever, not necessarily something that's tactical looking. But it does allow you to have a lot more functionality, and that's why I like having it with my stuff. So,
that's makes sense, and it's just a bit of a question because it's coming out a lot more now, and
everybody likes accessorizing with their stuff, and plus it becomes more of an individual thing too. You know, you're not walking out there and we all pull our Seikos out and they all look exactly the same. It's like one looks totally different, and we all had Tikkas out on our trip, besides the BSA.
Not all of us.
And besides some other things. But basically, you put them next to each other, and they look nothing alike.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing alike.
I mean, and Greg likes to accessorize with the incorrect barrel twist. I mean, you can do whatever you like.
I like to stand out in the crowd, and that's how I do these things, But also, too, you can change task. So, if you're out on a night shoot, spotlighting, there might be particular accessories you might want to put on. If you're doing set shots from a set position, you might want to change over to a different bipod. You might want to change to other accessories. So you could tie in with the actual task that you're performing with your rifle. So that's the other option too. That's what attracts me anyway.
Just, I guess, in relation to, you mentioned 7615s. They're probably the big one for, like Ben said, the bling kind of accessories. Now, I built a 7615 up in 30-223, so just the 223 to open straight up to 30 cal, sort of like an extended 300 blackout. And I built it, specifically for shooting pigs. And I went down the line of keeping it sort of minimal, like I didn't put any 4N rails or anything like that on it, because it was for a specific purpose in a vehicle where you've got to be moving quickly out of the vehicle. And I've seen some that have got rails hanging off them everywhere. They've got 4N grips on them. They've got adjustable stocks. They've got this, that. They've got doublers on their magnification for the scopes. And I think if you stop and think, what do you actually want to do with the rifle? If you want to have something set up where you can have a night vision scope you take on and off, and you have a laser, like Ben mentioned, a torch, these things, by all means, accessorize away. But you got to my thoughts are you plan what you want to do with it. And if you're going to be on foot shooting pigs or goats or whatever during the day, and you've got a specific kind of shooting, to me, a lot of that stuff can be superfluous, really.
Yeah.
But by all means, if you want to do it, I'd never discourage anyone. Yeah. If you want to build a rifle that you want a certain look, knock yourself out. Like there's a few things that will be detrimental to sort of the handling of it. Like if you make it too heavy, it can not handle as well. But as far as the look, I mean, go for it.
Well, see, we even found too with doing varmint hunting and shooting from they're saying the task specific, going between either day shoot and night shoot. Especially like with the TAC 21 that I've got, it's got a collapsible stock on it. So when we're out in the field, the stock comes out full length. We can actually lay down, do prone shooting, do nice long range shots over 1,000 meters. Whereas when we're in a car at night, you want that stock as short as possible so that you're in there. And like Andrew said, if you're shooting out of a vehicle, it's a purpose-built thing. So mine sort of is able to accessorize between the different roles that I wanted it to play. So, and that just takes a bit of forethought on what you're planning to do. There's plenty of things to accessorize them with, that's for sure.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for that.
No worries, mate.
So, Rusty, I just in the conversation that's just happened, I've been handed a rangefinder by Alex.
I was going to ask you about that. Do we need to get Alex on? Is it
I think, yeah. I mean,
okay.
just quickly explain what it is.
Yeah. I might run out with it.
Yeah, I may have stuffed it down my pants before we leave.
It's a pretty nice rangefinder, but we'll talk about it shortly. Yeah,
what rangefinder?
Yeah, I know, exactly.
No, I didn't see one.
Yeah, very good.
I mean, just sort of, this is, something that's very interesting to me, given I've done a fair bit of research on the rangefinder. So
absolutely. So right next to me is Alex. Alex has made his way to the front. And how are you, mate?
I'm all right.
Bring your he's too busy taking selfies with us than he is to talk on it.
That's right, I'm not on there. I'm not on that one.
Yeah, make sure you get Ben in it. Make sure
Jensen.
Jensen.
It's just the accent.
All right, so Alex, now that you've finished taking selfies, how's it going, man?
Yeah, I've been really busy today, so it's really good catching up with everybody and meeting everybody again, and yeah.
Awesome. So Andrew said we got to bring you over because you just dropped off some sort of package for him. All right. Oh, what's going on there?
With one of the older podcasts, I've heard that Andrew hasn't seen the G7. So
yeah. So well, just to explain a little more, it's the G7 Gunworks over in the States. They do a rangefinder now, and it's certainly reported to be a very good rangefinder. Sort of one step short of stepping up to the Vectronics level. Certainly a lot cheaper. A friend of mine in the US has one, loves it, but this is the first time I've had a chance to see one. So basically, how long have you had it, Alex, and what have you done with it? Like, what's your thoughts on it?
I've had it for about 6 months, I reckon, if that. The only reason I got it because I can't get the Vectronics in Australia due to American or US export laws. So that's the next step down, or what next best I can get.
Yeah, have you had a chance to use it in the field a lot at all, or what's your thoughts? What's your impressions on, what are you able to range? What kind of distances are you ranging animals and that sort of thing on?
I've been able to range 2.5 Ks or 2.2 Ks with trees.
Nice.
Down at Kai there. But nothing really with animals yet. But apparently by pointing, say, at a deer at 1,200 metres at a different angle, it should calculate a drop solution to your BC and velocity.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who lives over in Idaho, and he's got one, the very same. And I think he said, they were ranging out past 2,000 yards, no problem. The issue they were having is the ballistic solution will only give you a solution to 1,400 yards. Now, that's a long way for hunting. So, having said that, you can still utilise, a PDA or your phone with applied ballistics and shoot out to as far as it will range. So, I mean, it certainly seems like a very, very handy piece of kit.
Yeah, and I guess, Alex, this is a question for me. How have your solutions turned out, like in some of your, shooting long range? Have they been pretty good? Have you been pretty happy?
Yeah, I've been really happy, mainly using the Applied Ballistics program on my phone and tablet. I haven't really put the two, the G7 and the Applied Ballistics side by side to see the drop.
Yeah, okay.
So I can't really explain or tell.
Yeah, I mean, from the sort of reports I was hearing from my friend over in the US, he said it was at 1,400 yards, it was spot on. like the solution that the rangefinder gave was dead on. You know, was accurate enough to hit a coyote. So
with the videos I've seen and all that, with the reviews I've seen, it seems pretty good, especially with different angles. It will compensate the different angles, temperature, humidity, and all that into the calculations. The only thing it doesn't compensate is wind.
Well, I mean that's one of those things that. That was one I was going to ask.
We invent that's going to be on the cards, right? Yeah. We're going to invent one that does it all.
Well,
it's
there
coming.
is one on the way.
It's coming. Yeah, but while we wait for the laser wind reading, I mean, it was the next question I was going to ask. Does it have Bluetooth capability or not?
Nothing that I'm aware of just yet. I wish it does. And the downside, it's only stuck with yards. You can't convert it between or have it an option between meters or yards.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's a minor issue, really. I mean, you can work your way around that. So.
Yeah.
When you're shooting yards, it makes you sound better anyway. It's further along.
Yeah, it does sound.
That's
what
we forgot to do with all our records, Greg, was to change them to yards.
I always forget that. Change the yards. Could have made $1,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe Ben would be more familiar with yards.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure they're on the metric system in Canada.
Yeah, Canada's definitely metric.
No, well, thanks for coming up. That was, we said first time I've had a chance to have a look at one of these rangefinders in the flesh. So,
yeah, good on Alex.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to actually go and see it in the field. So.
Yeah, sweet, man, sweet.
And you're not getting it back.
That's it.
What rangefinder?
Yeah, we'll delete that part of the podcast and there'll be no evidence. Yeah. So Ben, thanks for joining us on this episode, and we're gonna get Dan in the hot seat in a moment. But this will be your second, but then there's another episode you're in. What have you done in your shooting life? What's brought you to this point? Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Okay, well I've been shooting since I was about 4 years old, back in the States, not Canada, even though it sounds very similar. And they do work in yards there, just to clarify.
In Canada.
No, in Minnesota, where I'm originally from. I've been in Australia for 30 years now, so I was through all of the buyback and all of the big gun changes within Australia, and just to see everything change over the years. My passion for shooting has always been there. I just never had the opportunity to go a little bit further along with it.
Sure.
Until we'd moved over to, I'm a carpenter by trade, builder by profession, and moved over to Port Lincoln to do some work over there, and I met a guy there who was just mad keen.
Yep.
And I started shooting some of his stuff with him and fell in love all over again. So
nice.
It really, really pushed me to then start going, okay, I need to pursue this and push this along a little bit further.
Yep.
So started doing that. I'm blessed also with property with where I live, so I've got my own 1,000 meter range, where we can do sighting in and all kinds of stuff. So the topography is really cool as well because it's a bit hilly, so it gives you a bit of challenge with wind calls and all that sort of thing. So it makes it for a good time. And then over the years, I'd been starting to get rifles, accessorize them, build them up, and then on-sell them to friends. And so that just kept going through more and more and more until recently, last couple of years, I thought, man, I should just become a dealer.
Right. Yep.
So hence the reason here I am now. I've got a gun shop up the north side of Adelaide.
And what is it? Tell us.
It's at a pistol.
Tell us the name of it. So
it's the Armory. Yeah, the Armory is what it's called, and basically it's just a tiny little shop where I can work out of. Usually only on the weekends at this stage because I'm obviously still trying to pay for everything. So work normally during the week.
Sure, that's life, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's right, exactly.
Except for Greg.
Except for Greg.
I'll give you a loan, Ben.
Yeah, please, I'd love that.
Just give him a donation.
Anybody who wants to donate online, go for it. So I'm doing that as well as building still, and just really enjoying going from, learning from a whole bunch of different guys on where shooting is and where it's come from and where it's going. All the development of new rifles and new systems and all that sort of thing have just been really, really. I've discovered a new one the other day, seriously, 4 days ago, that I'm now going, oh crap, I can just see a whole bunch of more money disappearing because it looks really cool.
Must have.
KDEX Defense, have you guys heard of
Oh,
them?
yeah.
Yeah.
They are just look really cool.
Greg's got 4.
Yeah, okay.
He's never heard of them, but he's
never
got
heard
a few
of
of them.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, they must be on my visa somewhere.
Yeah, that's right, somewhere. Yeah.
I think I've seen that on the account.
So, it's been a years of experience of learning and just listening to a whole bunch of guys do what they do. My brother was in the Special Forces and as a Marine, U.S. Marine. He was in Desert Storm and stuff. So I've always had military background in my family, and love that part of it as well because tactics and tactical side of what's happening. Getting away from the standard gun shops and actually going down the tactical line is kind of where I'm focused and heading. So
Awesome, man. Well, thanks heaps for your input tonight and for the previous episodes and the one to come.
love being here, man. So good. I just love being with these guys.
Just a
so
quick
much
one.
fun.
Where can people hook up with you, Ben, with the Armoury? You're on Facebook?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. The Armour 300 is what it is. And then the website is thearmory300.com. Okay, so it's not AU, it's just .com because I couldn't afford the AU apparently.
Isn't CN Canada? Or?
No, it's not Canada. No. It was going to be some Asian country, but anyway.
It was going to be Canada, but you can't work out meters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's way. Very good. All right, excellent, guys. We're going to take a short break, and we'll get down in here, and then we've got Dale coming and ask some questions. So we're back, and we've changed positions on the hot seat. Dan, welcome aboard, mate.
Hello.
And Dan hasn't appeared on a podcast in actual order, in release order, but he has on the Flinders podcast. So you're up there with us last weekend, mate. Enjoy it?
I was. It was bloody good.
Yeah, it was good fun. Good fun having you along. And tell us a little bit about your shooting background and history and that sort of gear.
Oh, you put me on the spot now.
Certainly have, mate. Certainly have.
Lots of fox shooting, mate. Lots of out in the flats, on the farms, taking care of the foxes for the farmers. Go back earlier than that, all the way to when I was a kid. Lots of 22 work.
Yep.
And yeah, worked my way up to the 250s and 243s, and then met you guys and started pushing further and further onto the 308, and I'm where I am now.
Yeah, absolutely. Good fun.
Yep.
Pulling off shots at 1,200 metres on goats.
Yeah, almost 1,200.
Just shy.
Maybe 3 metres shy.
Yeah, with a 308 is not bad. That's a qualifier.
But in yards, it was like way over.
Oh,
that.
I did calibrate to yards just to see, and I impressed myself.
Gotta love yards.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're impressed, Dan. So, young Dale over here is going to make his way up to the front and have a question for us. How are you tonight, Dale?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, pretty good, mate. And you've got some questions to throw to the lads. Tell us a little bit about your shooting and what you're enjoying doing, because I know it's somewhat new for you, isn't it?
I own a 308 myself and a 22 just for plinking. But most of the stuff I do is hunting and getting rid of lots of goats and rabbits and that sort of show. But I'm really trying to branch out into long-range shooting. Would really love to go long-range hunting. That's probably one of my main goals. But my main question is that I've been on the internet quite a lot trying to find out what caliber to use. What's a good starting caliber? Like, there's 6.5 Krieg, there's 243, 300 Win, all these different ones, and each one has their own fanboy almost, like their own fan crowd.
Yeah, the internet
and it's
crowd.
really hard to differentiate which one in particular is a good starting caliber.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'd probably start by saying you already got it, 308. I mean, it depends on what sort of format the rifle is. I mean, if it's a lightweight gun or a heavier gun, but the caliber itself, I think I could probably speak for all of us here. We all still use them. I mean, they're a fantastic long-range caliber. It's got its limitations, of course, but, so Dan took a goat at, what's the range again, Dan?
1194.
1,194 metres with a 308, and it's certainly got the energy to kill well at that range. So, yeah, I think you probably got a good caliber to start with. What sort of rifle is it?
It's nothing too fancy. It's just a Remington 783. bolt action. I got a muzzle brake made by Nick from Ignition Customs. It's just a basic hunting rifle. I haven't really put too much into it.
Yeah, I guess, sort of from my perspective, I'm not sure about you other guys, probably similar, that probably the limiting factor will be your scope. If you've got a rifle that's capable of, sort of shooting an inch group or less at 100 metres, it's going to turn it into a fairly effective long-range performer. But if you've got a cheap scope on it that lacks the elevation, lacks the adjustments, and doesn't actually adjust true to what you adjust on it, it's off in that regard, you'll struggle. So I guess, Dan, you've sort of started from, not going on the top, but you've worked your way up. So what would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah, well, what I was thinking with the rifle that you've got, I mean, you've got a good starting point. You could put good optics on it and get good with the rifle and start stretching it out. But being a budget rifle, you'll eventually get to the point where you'll see a weak spot in your rifle. You might need a better mount or need to get something bedded, or in long term you'll end up just putting more and more and more and more money into it, only because you're becoming a better shooter with it and you're wanting more performance. So rather probably be a better option long term to buy a good quality rifle if you want to go long range. But I've done that. I've got a cheap rifle which I've slowly poured money into over the years, and it's a good rifle. It shoots a long way. It's just what way you want to go. You're at the starting point now where you can choose. You don't have to go down the road of pouring a lot of money into a cheaper rifle. But yeah, that's where you're at.
I guess just what's probably worth noting quickly is often guys will spend $2-3 grand on a rifle, and they'll go and put a $400 or $500 scope on it. You're really, really hamstringing yourself. And my thoughts are you want to be at least prepared to spend as much or more on the scope as you would on the gun.
Yeah.
Because scopes are one of those things. You could have a rifle that's capable of a half-inch group at 100 metres, but if you put a cheap scope on it, particularly if you start winding up elevation and rather than just aiming at it and shooting, you actually start mechanically adjusting the scope. If you don't have a scope that's built to the required standards, you get massive variations, so much so that you'll be missing and you'll be wondering what's going on. Like, I missed that goat at 600 metres. I felt good, I had it, all my information was good. Why did I miss it? It could be nothing more than the scope fault, which is what Bronte, who came on earlier, he had that very same issue. And it wasn't until he actually checked the scope that he found that was where the issue lay. So for me, once you get serious about long-range shooting, you don't have to spend $3 or $4 grand on a scope. But if you're spending, I would say, anything short of maybe $1,200 or $1,300, you're really not going to get a scope that will do what you want it to do.
Yeah, a scope can make or break it. With the rifle you got, I mean, you could do great things with it. You can make ammo shoot through any barrel accurately, But if your scope is faulty in some way or not up to the tasks, you're wasting, you're making expensive noise.
Yeah, like often with scope issues, you get point of impact shift. So you might be shooting a group, you'll get two that are right on each other, and you'll get one that's way off, and then it's sort of, what was that? And it could be nothing wrong with your technique or with the rifle itself. It'd be purely scope issue. There's something internally moving in the scope. So I guess, what I would suggest would probably be shoot your gun that you've got. Don't get rid of it, but get good with it. Your technique is critical. Just get down behind the gun as much as you can and shoot it as much as you can.
Absolutely.
Because you could go and buy a $5,000 or $6,000 rifle tomorrow, and if you're not practiced at shooting, you're not going to be shooting it well. So I would suggest shoot what you've got until you find yourself out shooting your equipment, and then move on.
Good point, Andrew.
Yeah. And I'll just add on a side note, like looking away from the rifle, you talked about hunting in the field, and one thing you probably need to consider is as you start to reach out, you need a good rangefinder. That will just stop you in your tracks. If you can't range it, you're going to struggle to hit it. Because the further out you get, the more critical range becomes. The other one is if you haven't got into using a ballistic calculator, you might want to start looking at it. because that'll help you understand external ballistics and help you understand the sort of adjustments you need to be making and whether your scope and your load is capable of certain things, because you can illustrate it on a screen and you can run through the different scenarios, practice with your wind. It's just a really good aid to help your skills in terms of judging what your rifle can do. Just put some thought into that. I know with me, when I haven't been into long-range shooting that long, a number of years, but not that long really in my whole shooting career. And the first thing I quickly exceeded was my rangefinder. I was quickly shooting further than my rangefinder could range. So I was relying on other people to range for me. But that's cool. You can get out on the range. If you know the range to different plates out on a range, you can still get out there and do it and practice. That doesn't stop you. Shooting plates is great practice for hunting. You've got to think about those things as well, which is, obviously a bit more cash and, never seems to end. But, you've got to have the whole package. And when the package comes together, and it's like the last weekend where the 5 of us went into the Flinders long-range shooting, and you'll hear more about that in the podcasts, it all sort of comes together and it all happens. Yeah.
So you would say equipment is the most important part, not just the rifle itself? Or the caliber it is?
I wouldn't say necessarily it's the most important part. The most important part is you practicing. And I think, I said I wouldn't recommend somebody who's in your situation go out tomorrow and spend 10 grand on a setup. I would say spend your money on ammo and shoot it. What I would suggest would be check it. If you can get at 100 metre range and actually check your scope, to make sure your scope hasn't got any inherent issues with it. Once you've established that, I remember when I first started out, rangefinders weren't that commonly available, so you had to kind of pace it out in the field and just shoot. And I didn't know what velocities I was running. I didn't have ballistic calculators, so I just had to record everything. Okay, at 400 paces, it's this low on the target. At 500, it's this low, and so on and so on. So, but that's made easier these days by technology, but nothing beats practice.
Yeah.
That's
just
simple as that.
Start stepping out and just see where the limitations of your whole gear and ability and where that sits and how you can improve it to take the next step out.
I would say practice makes perfect in anything, but also that doesn't mean go out and just blow ammo and blow ammo and blow ammo. A little bit of knowledge along the way. So you're making the most of the ammo that you're shooting. You learn a bit, shoot a bit, learn a bit, and you'll go further rather than just burning barrels out.
Yeah, actually, a good one you told me, Dan, a couple of years ago just came to mind. It's like shoot each round as though it's worth $20.
Absolutely, yep, spot on.
Yeah, and and aim small and miss small, and just work with those two, and it'll all start to sort of come together.
Yep. It's easy. I remember when you're starting out, you'll fire a round off and it doesn't go where you want. And so you fire another one and it still doesn't go. And you think, maybe it was this. So you fire another one. Before you know it, you're frustrated and you've spent, 50 rounds down range and learnt nothing, So that little bit of knowledge along the way from the right people saves you a lot of ammo,
Yeah, and I'll also add too, more money to spend. Getting a good book too. It sounds like you're fairly new to the long range game. And you're getting sort of some misinformation from the internet. That's a pretty common problem.
Internet
just every single forum that exists almost. But look, there are some good ones out there if you know which ones there are. But maybe get a good book like we talk a lot about. Brian Litz's books are a really good start to understand the fundamentals. And it's not written in a complex way either. It's written in a way that's pretty easy to understand. And then that way you understand the theory and you're not getting misinformation from the internet. And it's a good basis for your understanding to start, reaching out and understanding what's affecting your bullet flight and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, a little bit of knowledge.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.
No problem.
Thanks heaps for that, Dale. I have no idea what you guys just spoke about, but I hope you recommended the 3-3.
I'm pretty sure he's really confused now.
He needs a loan.
Greg,
you're giving Dale a loan, I'm guessing?
Not interest-free.
Donation, benevolent fund.
Good. Hopefully you recommended the 338 Lapua Magnum. I'm hoping that was the deal. So
didn't you say 416 something or other?
Yeah, 416 Barrett.
Yeah, shoot rabbits at 50 yards.
Good beginner's round. Available in lots of gun shops.
Yeah, surely you won't get a flinch out of that.
No, why not? Absolutely. Very good. All right, we're going to grab Stewie over here. Stu's,
Stewie.
Come here, little fella.
Stu, some of you guys may know, Stu's been on a whole stack of the Southern Shooters videos, and he's made his way in here tonight. Stu, how's it going, mate? Come around here to the microphone. How's it going?
Good, and yourself, gents?
Very good, mate.
Very well. Very well.
Mate.
Wonderful. Enjoying your night, mate?
It's been good. Few beers and good food and good company. Talking about guns, can't get any better than that.
No, absolutely, mate. No, I don't know. I know you don't have a specific question for us, unless you've thought of something.
I've been chatting with Dan about what Ruger Precision I was going to look at buying, or what calibre to do. Again, I probably wanted one gun to do too many things, but we were chatting whether to go, I like the 6.5 and I want to do a bit of varminting and a bit of long range to try and push myself out to 1,000 metres and see what was happening. So that was what we were chatting about.
Well, you got my answer, Stu, so we'll see what the other fellas say and see if they match up. I'm pretty sure they won't.
Well, I don't know. I mean, are you talking about the original version or the enhanced version?
No, the enhanced one. I think for the bit extra money, you would be a bit silly not to.
There's no 6mm option in that, is there?
Yeah, see, to my way of thinking, in the original version, the 243 would have probably taken the cake.
I think Dan's very happy with you right now.
Well, I mean, you look at, and I don't just say that lightly. They thought it through, obviously, and they went with a fast twist barrel. I think it had a 1 in 7 twist barrel, which enables you to use the heaviest bullets in that calibre. Which turns it. I mean, you run the ballistics. You run on a 105 Burger in a 243. It smokes a 308. And
I think they close to match a 300, don't they? Out to sort of about the 800 mark at least.
Yeah, trajectory-wise.
Yeah. Obviously not energy-wise, but
yeah. And I mean, I think versatility-wise, you could load down to like Dan, you got fairly extensive experience. You'd load the 55s and 58s and explode rabbits at 200, 300, 400 metres, or you can step up to the heavy stuff and shoot as far as you want, really.
Yeah, well, my answer, part of my answer to Stu was, if you're trying to build a gun that's going to cover absolutely everything, you're going to substitute some part of it, And if you want a gun like a PRI gun for steel and hunting as well, then I figured the 243 with the 105s would be a good PRI, and you can load your 87 and go hunting goats. And
yeah, and I guess as you said, you were going with the enhanced version, so they dropped the 243 in that line, which is surprising. But in absence of the 243, I would say the 6.5 Creedmoor would be the one to go for. As much as I love 308, it's not as versatile, I guess, as the 6.5 Creedmoor.
Yeah. What about with varminting? Because like Dan was saying, I'm probably trying to get too many things in one gun. I'm trying to sneak one more in before things change in my life at the minute, so try to get one more in the door, but probably want something to varmint, from 100 to 300-400 metres, and then do some PRI stuff as well. So
yeah, see, I think if you settle on the enhanced version of the precision rifle, I would suggest the 6.5 Creed does or can fill those roles in that. You could load, I'm not sure of the exact weights, but I think it might be a 90 or a 95 grain ballistic tip or something like that. And I know, most manufacturers do lighter weight 6.5 projectiles that, will explode rabbits and foxes. They're not ballistic, like their ballistic coefficients are not great, so they're not going to be suitable for those really long shots. But if you want to have a rifle where you go, okay, there's a rabbit warren at 400 and there's one at 300 and one at 280, and you want to sit there and do that, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yet if you want to, say, go in a PRI type comp, you can load a 140 or 142 grain VLD type bullet for the long range shooting and even long range hunting. I mean, Berger now make a big range of 6.5 projectiles specifically for hunting.
And that's going to get bigger and bigger, I think, too, over because it's becoming very popular. So
it's hugely popular. I mean, there's guys in the US are hunting elk at 900 yards plus with 6.5 284s, which are a little bit more velocity, but same projectile. So that kind of gives you an indication of the capability of a projectile that size. So I think the 6.5 is probably, for what you want to do, is probably about ideal, really.
Yeah.
And you can crank those really light bullets, get them up fast,
yep,
and be explosive, and yet you can with the same gun, all you got to change is your load, and you're effective at 1,000 metres plus on targets.
Yeah, I know when we did that ballistic analysis, Andrew, right early in the podcast series, and we looked at primarily 6mm and 6.5mm, and basically 6 and 6.5 had similar ballistic profiles except for energy on target. So if you want more energy at distance, definitely lean towards a 6.5.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to do long-range hunting and terminal performance is more important to you,
Definitely, yeah.
I'd probably lean towards 6.5. If you're just shooting plates where terminal performance is not really important, well, then the 6 is great because it's lower recoil, follow-up shots, all that sort of stuff. So, definitely if you're going to look at long-range hunting, I'd probably lean towards a 6.5 as well.
Yeah, no, after seeing you boys up in the Flinders, that was just one of the other factors as well, so yeah.
Yeah, no, a few guys will get hungry when they see a bit more footage come out.
Yeah, so. No, that looked pretty bloody good, so. Yeah, I'll just hand it back to Rusty.
I can't wait to actually listen to this podcast because I don't know what's on it. This is good. So next question is or statement or whatever it is coming in from Nick. Nick from Ignition Custom. How you going, mate?
Oh, not too bad. I'm surviving pretty well. How's everyone else doing?
Yeah, we're all pretty good. We've had a couple of drinks and talking about guns. It's a pretty terrible night, really. So you were going to say something. What's happening?
Yeah, I've got a lot of customers who come to me every so often. I remember you guys were talking about scopes the other week, but another thing which I think is overlooked is triggers. A lot of guys are asking about the width of the trigger. Obviously, you've got, say, like the Dual, which is quite narrow, and a lot of guys are asking about trigger shoes and putting them on, as well as bolt knobs that people are asking about, because it's the thing you actually use to drive the firearm, unlock, reload, as well as actually manipulate the trigger. So I just want to know what other guys' takes are and what they think the industry might be heading and how they're going to handle it.
In regards to triggers, I don't think the width of the trigger blade is too much more than personal choice. I've used Duals extensively, and I've used multiple other brands with wider blades, and to me it's more how the trigger works is the critical factor. I think the width of the trigger blade is a personal thing, and where you sit the blade in your finger when you actually shoot. So I don't think necessarily the sort of wide, really, really wide trigger blades is, to me, it's an old concept, an older concept. You'd see the old Kanjar trigger shoes that people would fit to fox shooting rifles in the 70s and 80s. I'm not really sure why that was done, because you look at now in serious competition, whether it be bench rest or F-class or the PRS type shoots, there's a mix. There's no sort of one type that's shot extensively. Personally, I prefer not excessively wide, but not the really narrow. I like Dual, but that's mainly because of they feel so good when you use them. I'd prefer if they were a couple of mil wider, but they've got their reasons, I guess. But I don't know. What about the rest of you guys?
I totally agree, man. I think it's just a personal preference, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I know for me, I haven't had much experience with many different triggers. I just got a basics trigger, which, obviously going to a lighter trigger definitely improved my groups quite considerably. But just on another note, reading, there was a good PRS article on the Precision Shooting blog, which talked about triggers used in the PRS. And there is actually quite a wide range of triggers used by the top, I think, 100 competitors in the PRS. Yeah, I'd take any one of those, to be honest. They all look like pretty good triggers, I guess. As the guys talked about, have got more experience than me. It comes down to personal preference and what you like the best.
That trigger you got, Greg, it's a wider one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a wider one.
See, when I shot your gun the other day, I'm used to the ticker trigger, and it was a wider one and completely different to what I got, but I was just like, well, this feels different, feels good.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't really have a problem. It was
more
good.
About the crisp break, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a really nice trigger.
Yeah. I guess in regards to bolt knobs, as you mentioned, that again is probably personal choice. But I guess if you take, for example, you fit a lot of them, but guns like a Remington 700, for example, in a standard configuration, if you're trying to shoot quickly, there's not really a lot to grab hold of, and sort of you've got this little tiny knob. If you fit it with an extended bolt knob, it's a lot quicker. You can just quickly whack it with your hand and up it comes. You don't have to kind of grasp this little tiny thing.
Yeah, a lot of guys have actually said they sweep their hand up rather than actually physically grab the knob. They almost rotate their wrist up to knock the bolt up. That's why they want a slightly larger knob.
Well, that's
get under
it's pretty flush to the stock, isn't it, as well?
Yeah,
that's
in a lot of cases.
a lot quicker. You don't have to actually physically look at, okay, now I've got to grab hold of the bolt knob and manipulate it. You just quickly sweep it up with your hand. Now, if in that regard, depends on the action, of course, but on actions where there's not a lot there to grab hold of, certainly beneficial, but I think it's more of a mechanical thing and personal. I mean, if you're trying to shoot quickly, I think it's probably a pretty good benefit there.
Yeah, now, Nick, I know you own a few rifles. Have you gravitated towards any particular trigger type that you prefer? Or
I have. I've tried a lot. I've tried the serrated front, flat blade fronts, whether it be an actual straight trigger or curved. Out of all the different ones I've tried, I'm starting to rock the 2-stage at the moment just because it's something different for me.
Yep.
I'm not quite as happy with them, but I tend to find at the moment Timneys I'm working really well with. They seem to agree with me, and the adjustability range on them is very, very high. They've got a very good range of what you can adjust them to. But the standard model, for if anybody knows their range, the model 510, which basically feels like a Remington trigger shoe, it's very similar. But I've tried all the flats, the straights, and serrateds and knots, and even some of the other ones. One of the Target ones, it's actually got a round knurled stick that's put on there.
Oh, okay, I haven't seen those.
That wasn't a Tim, that was the Jewels, I think it is.
No, Tim, we do one that.
Yeah, I tried one of those for about 2 months, and I couldn't work it properly. Just for some reason, it didn't feel right. I felt like I was actually pulling the trigger to the side. I just couldn't get my fingers set right. But yeah, I guess it is, as you said, a unique thing. But a lot of guys have actually been recently asking me about very small ones, and I don't know why. My theory was that if it's a really wide trigger, when they get their whole pad on the finger, they can't get the sensation as good. But if it's a thinner blade, it puts more pressure in one point. So even though it still might be a 1 pound trigger, because it's a narrow point, it feels a bit more definite in their finger. Whereas if it's nice and wide, spread out, there's different load bearing. That's how it was explained to me, and I can understand it. But I don't have enough experience to sort of confirm that. But at the moment, I'm just running the standard width. Seems to work.
Just one thing I just thought of. You got to think of the ergonomics of it all too. Like, rather than thinking about the gun, think of the shooter. There's some guys with really big hands out there, and some with real small hands. And there might be a pattern. The guys with bigger hands are wanting a wider trigger to hold on to.
It's true. It's true.
I guess, yeah, in some aspects, if anyone who knows me would actually know that I cut my trigger finger off years ago, and my trigger finger doesn't actually work, and it's actually got stitches in it right now. So because of that, actually, a lot of my shooting's actually left-handed. So that's maybe why I can't agree with some triggers in the right
I did
hand.
not pick that, mate.
You didn't?
I did not.
All I remember about you is you just running behind me and you catching all the dirt as I'm kicking it up. That's all I know
you did well.
That's all I know about you, buddy.
Well, the left-handed bit's probably a fair bit of the handicap you're facing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think we all need to be just taken out and drowned. Just given a big white hat with a big D on it and just left alone.
I've never heard anyone admit it.
Well, it's kind of funny. I still actually shoot competition left-handed with pistols, and I'm still topping the club at the moment, so I'm doing half decently. So.
How'd you find changing over?
I'm left-eye dominant, and I cut my finger off when I was 16 years old, right. So just about all of my shooting career.
Okay.
And it actually came from the military, so being left-handed in the military, I was one of the unique guys that actually sort of worked for me in some aspects.
Yep, cool.
Anyway, thanks for the question, guys.
Oh, cheers.
Guys, thanks for coming along. I think we'll go back to getting to the front of the bar again. That was really good. Thanks for all your input, Dan. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me. Thanks.
No, easy done. And I'm going to go back and actually listen to what you guys spoke about because I haven't heard it yet. So excellent. Guys, thanks heaps for listening. And hopefully this has been enjoyable and answered a few questions that you might be asking. We're always happy to take questions, so flick them through an email or website or anything like that. And we look forward to hearing from you. And what do we have to do? We'll be back in a couple of weeks, probably with another episode of something. Oh, the Flinders one. Yeah,
we've got to follow up on Flinders.
We'll have another chat about some stuff.
I'm waiting to see what's edited out of that.
Most of your bits.
Most of it.
All right, very good. All right, guys, thanks for listening, and thanks, boys, for doing this.
Catch you later.
No worries.
Thanks for listening to the Precision Shooting Podcast. To To continue the discussion, check out our Facebook page. And for more information, head to our website, www.precisionshootingpodcast.com.au. This episode was brought to you by Projectile Warehouse. Find your perfect projectile.